Everything you wish you could ask, straight up, to the point, no escape.
Okay, so who got their facts wrong?
You never get the answer if you don't ask the question.
Do you regret your involvement?
Winnipeg Direct with John Youngberg.
Welcome to Winnipeg Direct, a show dedicated to informing Winnipeg and Manitoba about big issues, current events, and topics you may not even know about. I'm your host, John Youngberg, and today we're diving right into election talk. Joining us on the panel is NDP Cabinet Minister Jennifer Howard. Thank you so much for being here. Conservative MLA Kelvin Gertsen is here. Thank you as well. And Liberal leader Dr. John Gerard. Thank you for being here, everybody. On Monday, May 2nd, the Conservative Party, led by Prime Minister Stephen Harper, not only won a majority government, they also made history, being the first party to win an election 3 consecutive times. This was also a historical night for the NDP party, as well as the Liberals and the Bloc Québécois. The polls spoke in volumes as a result of the Conservative Party winning 167 seats and up 24 seats from the previous election. Kelvin, I'm going to throw the first question right at you. The Conservatives were not only fighting to win the election, but to get the majority now that Harper has it. What do you feel that's going to do for the Canadian economy?
Well, I mean, certainly I think it's good for the country overall. I mean, I think that the message that we heard during the elections, people wanted stability. They didn't want this sort of constant thrust into an election. They wanted a change in tenor and tone in Ottawa. Constantly being on an election footing, I don't think is good for the democratic system. I don't think it's good for the economy, because you need that long-term planning. So Mr. Harper, I think, has proven that he's a good economic planner, he's a good economic manager, and now he's going to have those 4 years to do it. So I think the Canadian people sent the right message. They're always right. I never argue with the electorate, but I really think they got it right this time.
Okay. John, obviously a shocking night for Liberals, losing 43 seats. What are your thoughts on that overall?
Well, certainly a disappointing night, although I like the fact that Kevin Lamoureux won here. But certainly what it means is that, like 1984, there's a rebuilding period. And that means a lot of grassroots activity. And I think that's actually going to be good for us in Manitoba. And, you know, the other message that came was the excitement about a third party. And that's looked pretty good for a message for us here as the Liberal Party in Manitoba. And I think we can look forward to some exciting times going into the provincial election.
All right, there we go. Jennifer, before the election, the NDP only had 36 seats. Now you have 102 seats. Now, is that because Canada sees Jack Layton as a leader, or because of the NDP's platform, do you think?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. I think Jack took a message to Canadians about things that are important to families: healthcare, hiring more doctors and nurses, protecting people's pensions. I think that was a very important message. And I think one of the great things coming out of the election is that Quebecers are represented by a party that is Canadian, that believes in Canada, that is a federalist party. I think that is, for Canadians, one of the great victories out of this election. I'm really pleased to hear Calvin talk about the message of a stable economy, because that's exactly the message we'll be taking to Manitobans in October. We have a very similar plan to Mr. Harper's plan to manage the economy. 5 years, bring the books back into balance, protect healthcare and social services. So I think it was an interesting, exciting election. For all of us who like to watch elections, it was an interesting and exciting night. And I think it also showed for everyone, for our own election coming up, it really matters. Voting really matters. Getting involved really matters. At the beginning of this campaign, everybody's saying it's boring, it's not going to matter. Right. Nobody wants this election. By the end, it was history making. And so I think that's a good message for all of us, that to get involved, to vote, you can make a huge change in history.
I think there's a couple of points we could agree on. Certainly, when you look at Quebec, I'm glad that there is now a federalist party that has a majority of seats in Quebec. It might not be my party, but I would prefer to have a federalist party than the Bloc running Quebec. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody compare the fiscal policies of Stephen Harper to the NDP government, who's doubled our debt in Manitoba in the last 10 years, that continues to run massive deficits, not because it has to, but because it wants to. It's a bit of a stretch to compare Stephen Harper's policy to the NDP.
To bring the budget back into balance, get through the recession. Maclean's calls it the Manitoba miracle.
Of course,
it's a very similar plan. Your plan is to bring the books back into balance in 1 year and cut $500 million out and put healthcare and social services at risk. That's a plan that Canadians rejected in this election.
Of course, the difference that we saw is that during the good times, when there was good times, there's a lot of provinces like Saskatchewan that paid down their debt. They were able to do a lot of good things. Manitoba took a different approach under the NDP. They continued to increase the debt. They doubled it. And they continue with wasteful spending with things like the bipolar line, just going on the wrong side of the province, which is going to cost cost, $4 billion, that kind of wasteful spending. People see that in a lot of different areas. We all agree the NDP can spend money, but they're not getting results for that money, and that's the difference.
Hey, you've got to recognize that Harper built up quite a deficit when he was in Ottawa too, and we're going to have to wait and see. The jury's out in terms of how well he'll manage the economy moving forward. But certainly, as we look to the provincial election, yeah, there's a big deficit here in Manitoba that's worrisome. And certainly in Manitoba, there's not only a big deficit, but we've got some big problems here. We're the highest in terms of violent crime in Canada. We've had dramatically decreases in our international test scores for students in education. And we've got huge numbers of kids going into foster care at the moment, and when we should be supporting families a lot better. So there's going to be some very interesting outcome as a result of the federal election in terms of what happens in the campaign here moving into October.
All right. Well, I'm going to toss one right back at you. Feel free to all jump in as you just did. That was fantastic. Michael Ignatieff was clearly not appreciated, for lack of a better term, well liked across the country. He didn't even win in his own riding. Now, do we expect a comeback from the Liberal Party, do you think? Or is that going to be maybe feel the effects for a few years down the road?
Well, I mean, Michael, I think, suffered from the fact that there was huge amounts of money spent by the Conservatives attacking him, and I think unjustifiably, but that happened, and that's one of the things that sometimes happens in politics. Michael has decided to go back into academic at the University of Toronto. But for the Liberal Party, what that means is a time to reorganize with a majority government, that you're not having to worry about fighting the next election in the next few months. And so you have the time. And what it also means is that, and what happened in after 1984, was much more presence of the Liberal Party, much more building here in Manitoba, and need for substantial opposition federally. But at the same time, just as it was good for the Liberal Party in 1988, when there was a majority Conservative government, so I think it's going to be good for the provincial Liberal Party here with the situation lined up as it is now.
When you look at it, I think that the Liberal Party is going to take some time and have to look at why they didn't connect. And it's not just a matter of their leader not connecting, it's the things that they were talking about. I mean, when you talk about gun control and you're going to continue to have the gun registry in place and make criminals out of farmers and duck hunters, well, that doesn't make sense to a lot of people. When you talk about the fact that the Liberals said, we want to keep this vote tax, this per person vote tax in place, and Mr. Harper said, you know what, you should have to go out and earn your own money. And ironically, in Manitoba, it's the same thing. The NDP brought in a vote tax, they want to keep it, and we've said, get rid of it.
Well,
you know what?
Let's go. That money,
well, then take the law away. You brought the law in, and you won't retract it.
You know that. I mean, your party took $1 million plus out of the last election, more than any other party.
At your
in
NDP
Manitoba.
Convention, you passed a resolution, said you want to keep the bill. We said eliminate the bill. Yes. We brought in a bill.
We can't even get into your convention. The doors are shut to the public.
We brought in a bill.
Nobody in the media was allowed to see your convention.
We brought in a bill in the legislature and said, let's eliminate the vote tax. The NDP said, no. We want to keep that because we might want to use it sometime. We think political parties should go out to the people and say, we want to earn our own money. Well, this is what we stand for. This is what we believe in. If you want to support us by giving money, well, then do that. And if you don't, then give it somewhere else or don't give it all. But the NDP just want to reach in your pocket and take it. So the Liberals, and going back to the federal Liberals, they're going to have to connect that way.
Just hang on a second.
That's part of the reason they had trouble.
Well, I think that there is a lot of building of new approaches and new vision. But I think that some of the discussion here, we've had in Manitoba, we have the highest rate of violent crime. And I think part of this is that we've had a U.S. approach to crime, put people in prisons as fast as you can from the Conservatives and from the NDP. And we need a new approach which actually reduces crime and tackles the issues, the fundamental causes of crime much more effectively than we've had. And, I think that Manitobans are looking for a significant change, a new vision for Manitoba, and not just one of the two old line parties here in the province.
I think one of the most interesting things coming up is going to be renegotiating the health accord. And health care continues to be the #1 priority of Canadians and Manitobans. And there is going to be an opportunity to renegotiate that, to put the emphasis on the things that Manitobans care about, like hiring more doctors and nurses. That's something we have done every year we've been in government. And we very much want to be at the table because we think that it's important for there to be a voice there that's going to protect the public health care system, that's going to make sure that it changes, that's going to make sure that it serves Canadians, but that fundamentally we are protecting the public health care system, which is a jewel of Canada and Canadians' value.
course,
Jennifer's very right that we have to preserve Medicare. But the problem is that what the NDP are doing at the moment is by not managing things well. We've got huge waiting lists. We've got major problems in the healthcare system. And with the approach that the Conservatives are going to take with, privatizing the healthcare system, we need to renew Medicare. We need to renew it in a way that's very effective. And that's what the Liberals are about. It's the Liberals who are really going to be the champion of renewing Medicare, making sure that we preserve Medicare, and making sure that Medicare is for people when they need it here in Manitoba and forever.
About half of our provincial budget, we're getting close to it, is related to healthcare, and people want that money to be spent effectively and appropriately. Instead, what we've seen is huge bureaucracies grow up in the healthcare system under the NDP government, where you have great big buildings going up, shiny buildings for bureaucrats, but on the front lines, those nurses and the doctors, they're not getting the support they need because it's being wasted away by the bureaucracy. So you see situations like Brian Sinclair, who waited in a waiting room for 34 hours and died without care. And people ask the legitimate question, if you're spending half of your budget on healthcare, why aren't we getting care? Why are people still in those waiting rooms?
They put forward a motion for a spending review process. And those of us who lived here through the 90s know what a spending review process in healthcare means. It means the exercise like Connie Curran. It means the firing of over 1,500 nurses. It means not investing in healthcare capital. Those are the things that happened the last time the Conservatives were in government, and Manitobans have long, long memories. And just not a few weeks ago, they put forward a resolution in the legislature to subject the healthcare system to a spending review process. And we all know what that results in. It results in deep cuts.
Spending review means if you're going to spend a lot of money, get some results. If you're going to spend $5 billion on healthcare, why are things getting worse? If you continue to spend, you just can't keep spending.
2,000
you can't keep spending and making things get worse. They're in the hallways, dying in the waiting rooms. That's not results.
There's a major issue here of quality of care, and we're seeing it in a big way in our personal care homes. We've had seniors coming to us with stories of real problems in personal care homes under the NDP. Tragic stories, stories of bad things happening, and we have to be focusing on making sure that people have got the quality care that's needed, and that they've got a government which really cares about making sure that quality care is there. And that's what we're about in the Liberal Party. We need to make sure that the care is there for people at the time they need it, and whether it's in hospital, whether it's in a personal care home, or whether it's in a doctor's office or a clinic, and also preventing the health problems.
That's key.
We've got a major epidemic of diabetes at the moment, and in 12 years the NDP have done very little to address this, to turn it around. That's the other thing that Liberals are much more effective at, is making sure that when we've got a major epidemic like that, we'll treat it like an epidemic, we'll start to turn it around, and we'll make sure that the healthcare system becomes more manageable. Because if all you're going to do is rely on the fact that you're building more dialysis machines and more kidney transplants and so on, you're not going to have sustainable health care, nor is it going to be good for the population. We need to be keeping people healthy. We can do it. There's a lot of tools out there, a lot of things, but we need to have a government which is effective in implementing those instead of what we've had recently.
There we go. What is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, so to speak. Do you think we're going to see the provincial election mirror the federal?
Well, I think there's a lot.
I don't think that.
Go ahead. I want you to go. I want to hear what you say.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I don't. If you look, it's a very challenging game to try to translate those results. I think we would all agree there's many parts of the province where people vote one way federally and the other way provincially. I think when you look at the overall results in Manitoba, the NDP vote went up, the Tory vote went up, the Liberal vote went down. That's pretty much what happened throughout the rest of the country. So I'm not sure how much difference the results are going to have provincially. I think the next provincial election is going to be very, very competitive. And what we saw in this election, especially seats that were tight, Winnipeg North, the difference was 45 votes after all the votes are validated. So those kinds of seats are going to be tight, and it's going to mean everybody has to be out working and voting.
Wow. We could go on forever. We're going to take a bit of a break here at Winnipeg Direct. We'll be back. Welcome back to Winnipeg Direct. I'm John Youngberg.